If we would stand and salute the flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Decided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, at least 48 hours prior to the commencement of the meeting by promptly posting in the municipal complex an announcement giving the time, date, location, and agenda of this meeting, mailing such announcement from Home News and Tribune, and filing a copy of such announcement with the municipal clerk. Mr. Lauer?
Here.
Mr. Lamarcus?
Here.
Mr. Marucci?
Here.
Mr. Schmidt?
Here.
Mr. Lenning?
Here.
Mr. Pink?
Here.
Mr. Renner?
Here.
Chairman Buchanan?
here.
Ms. Carey?
Here.
Mr. Dargy?
Present.
Mr. Renson?
Here.
Ms. Jones?
Here. Okay, I just want to remind everybody that we're being televised, and the cameras will go off at 10, and the meeting may still be going on at that time. Okay, we have the minutes for April 2nd, 2019. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Okay, moved by Mr. Marucci, second.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Schmidt. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lauer?
Yes.
Mr. Lamarcus?
Yes.
Mr. Marucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Lenning? Mr. Pink? Mr. Renner? Chairman Buchanan?
Yes. Resolutions 45-18 PA Amboy Bank Administration Building. I have a motion.
I'll move it.
Okay, moved by Mr.
Second.
Schmidt, seconded by Mr. Marucci. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lauer?
Yes.
Mr. Marucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Lenning?
Yes.
Mr. Pink?
Yes.
Mr. Renner?
Yes.
Okay, continuances 58-14P Woodhaven Village, Section 3, preliminary major subdivision with C variances. The applicant is requesting to be continued to July 2nd, 2019 with further notice. Is there anyone here that's here for that particular application?
It's actually August 6th.
Pardon me?
That's when it's going to August 6th.
Oh, okay, it's going to be continued to August 6th. So if anyone is here for that application, come back on August 6th.
And they will still be providing notice for that one. They will provide notice for
Yes.
August.
Okay, and then we have application 38-18P, RD Management Corp. F, preliminary and final major site plan. Applicant requesting continuance to July 2nd, 2019 without further notice. Is there anyone here for that application? Okay, it will be continued then to July 2nd, 2019. Okay, and we have our one application. 58-14P Woodhaven Village, Section 2, Phase 5, final major subdivision and site plan.
Good evening, Chairwoman Cannon, members of the board. Ron Shimanowitz here on behalf of the applicant, Woodhaven Village, Inc. We're before you tonight for another part of Woodhaven. This is the final subdivision and site plan approval for Section 2, Phase 5. We're seeking both final site plan approval as well as final subdivision approval. The site plan approval is to create 186 fee simple townhomes, certain roadways, detention basins, associated parking areas, and stormwater basins. The subdivision approval creates 186 fee simple townhouse lots, as well as other lots for open space and basins and a future commercial lot. So there's both a site plan and subdivision component to this application. Our witnesses tonight will include our site engineer, Scott Turner from Menlo Engineering, as well as our architect, Rob Larson from CPL. We do have the review letters, and we're prepared to respond to them. So unless there's any other housekeeping, I'd like to call my first witness, who is Scott Turner, our site engineer.
Get you sworn in. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State and spell your name for the record, please.
Scott Turner.
Okay, before we start, I just wanted to mention that Ms. DeLuca has joined us. Okay.
Mr. Turner's been accepted as a site engineer in the past, but if you'd like to hear his qualification, we'd be happy to have him, or at least the brief version if you would like.
A brief version.
A brief version, please.
I am a graduate with a civil engineering degree. I have over 30 years of experience in the field of civil engineering and development. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New York.
Okay, that's fine. Are you going to use a microphone? Are you going to be over there?
Would you like me to, or I can speak louder, or whatever you prefer me to do?
I think it would be helpful.
This one here, right, I can do that.
Scott, why don't we get your exhibit marked first, and then you can go right into your testimony. Exhibit A1, yes.
Okay, the first exhibit's Exhibit A1. It is Woodhaven Village, Section 2, Phase 5, overall plan exhibit dated May 6, 2019. And it is a colorized version of the overall development plan that was produced by our office, overlaid on top of a Google aerial image from 2018.
Thank you. You can proceed with your testimony. Remembering that we're seeking final approval, so we need to satisfy the conditions of preliminary, and you can go right ahead.
Sure. So just very quickly for the record, the property is known as Block 22001, Lot 2.12. It does contain approximately 66.89 acres. It is known as Woodhaven Village, Section 2, Phase 5. It is located on the southerly side of Texas Road. It has 2 points of access off of McLean Street, which intersects Texas Road in between Murray Drive and Woodhaven Boulevard. The property is governed by the PD zoning standards, and it's consistent with the approval for preliminary major subdivision and site plan. There are no additional variances or waivers required with this application. This application, as Mr. Szymanowicz pointed out, is for final major subdivision and site plan approval. The project itself consists of 186 fee simple, 3-bedroom townhouse units and associated improvements. Included in that is the creation of 194 new tax lots, which include the 186 fee simple lots, 1 open space lot, 4 parking area lots for the small parking lots that are scattered throughout the development, and 2 stormwater management lots, and 1 lot for future commercial development. Each of the townhomes will contain a single-car garage, a single-car driveway, and in the rear, a private deck will be associated with each of the particular units. All of the roads will be public and will be dedicated to the township within 50-foot wide right-of-ways, and the roads will be 30 feet wide with granite block curb on either side. 4-foot wide sidewalks will be installed on both sides of the road, as well as ADA-compliant curb ramps at all the street intersections. There are also associated with the development on and off-street parking areas that are scattered throughout the project, and the entire design of the subdivision, including those parking areas as well as the road networks itself, are compliant with New Jersey residential site improvement standards. The project requires 447 parking spaces. It requires 447. We're providing a total of 546 spaces, which include 174 on and off-street parking spaces that, again, are distributed throughout the property to service the development. Based on a couple of comments from the staff reports, we will be reducing that off-street parking, on or off-street parking number by a few, but we certainly have an excess of parking, so we can do that without jeopardizing the required number of parking spaces for the development. The stormwater management, again, is consistent with the preliminary site plan approval. There are 2 detention basins proposed, one at the rear of the development, the westerly side of the site along Barclay Brook, and then another wet pond on the easterly side of the site near McLean Street. Both of these are wet ponds. Locations are consistent with the approved locations from preliminary, and they both will discharge their stormwater flow into Barclay Brook. Those 2 detention basins, I want to point out, also will be privately owned and maintained. They will not be deeded over to the township. And then we have all the other utilities, including lighting and landscaping, that are going to be installed in accordance with the approved plans.
Scott, Were there any changes from the preliminary, in particular, any changes to the basins?
Yes, there were. There were some minor modifications related to the detention basins, and they were really to try to make the detention basins function a little better than they were designed previously. They're brought up to current standards, DEP standards, as well as all the other standards that would apply. For instance, there were a number of outlet points that would discharge flow out of those ponds, specifically for the westerly basin, that has been consolidated into one standard, very uniform, typical outlet control structure, one discharge point. And the pond at the easterly side, which is basin number 2, that is existing. That's there today. It has the fence installed around it. And that one, in similar fashion, was kind of just redesigned as necessary to comply with the new standards.
Thank you. And we've received review letters from Mr. Dargy, dated April 29th, 2019, which is the engineering review. We have Mr. Remsa's review letter of April 11th, 2019. We have the Traffic Planning and Design, Inc. letter from Ms. Drum, dated April 29th, 2019. We have a Bureau of Fire Prevention letter dated April 24th, 19. And we have a police review that looks like it's marked received March 21, 2019. Have you had a chance to review those, and can you comment on them?
I have, and we'll just go to Mr. Dargy's report first, and there's only a couple in here that I'd like to just speak about. First one is on page 3, under additional variance number 1. He does point out correctly, based on the plan, there is shown a rear yard setback variance for a deck that's located within the setback. That was a drafting error on our part, but we agree we're going to relocate that out. We'll adjust the lot line accordingly, so we're not seeking any new variances with the application. And the last one, with respect to that letter, is on page 10. And again, it's just an item that will continue as a continuing obligation. It's item number 11, regarding the performance of soil tests and the determination of the depth to seasonal high water table. That's been ongoing and done by the applicant as they continue to develop these sections, and that will be continued with this section as well.
And that gets witnessed by the inspecting engineer's office, is that correct?
That's correct, yes, sir. All the other comments in Mr. Dargy's report, we're going to work with his office and comply. And we have Mr. Remsa's report dated April 11, 2019. I did review that report, and I just will point out on page 2, 5C, in regards to the parking, we have all 3-bedroom units within this community. There are no 4-bedroom units. Other than that, we're going to comply with his requirement as well. And Ms. Drum's report from April 29th, 2019, we are going to comply with all of those requirements. And the same holds true. The Old Bridge traffic report has no comments. They find the plans acceptable. And the Bureau of Fire Prevention Fire District from April 24th, we will comply with his requirements as well.
Thank you. Nothing further, Mr. Turner.
Okay, do you have any comment?
No, Mr. Turner agreed to comply with all the comments in our letter. We did get a chance to meet with the applicant and their engineer last week to go over in detail our letter and Ms. Drum's letter, and I don't have any questions for Mr. Turner at this time.
Okay, Mr. Remsa?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I, too, don't have any questions. I am very happy to hear that they are going to comply with my letter. I'm asking for additional landscaping to improve the aesthetics as well as the buffering for the future residents of this development. But other than that, I am satisfied, and it's just a little cleanup on the plans.
Anyone from the board have any questions or concerns? Yes, Mr. Merlin.
When you say the detention basins are going to be privately owned, do you mean is Woodhaven going to keep them, or the homeowners association going to be responsible for them?
It would be the homeowners association.
So we know they'll be back before the township asking us to take them over.
Our proposal is that the homeowners association will take them over.
Don't we have an ordinance that you have to contribute a certain amount of money for the maintenance?
I believe that ordinance is in the case where we wish you to take the basins over. Well, I don't believe we're proposing that
Yeah,
for
our
this
ordinance, sorry, our ordinance basically says that for single-family developments, the developer can ask the township to take the basins, and at that time, the township will take
Oh,
them.
okay.
And at that time, the engineer's office would determine the amount based on the size and type of basin. They would determine a bulk, or sorry, a lump sum amount that the developer has to contribute to the township for the long-term maintenance of that basin. But this is a multifamily development, and the township requires that it be retained by a homeowners association or developer. So it shouldn't be, it won't become a township basin. I understand what Mr. Merwin's saying, though, that a lot of times HOAs come back and petition the town to take the basin, but
But that's exactly what happens, is that the homeowners association finally says, hey, this is cost prohibitive, and maybe we cut it to the chase, and we can utilize the single-family home ordinance to, to get out in front of it.
I'll defer to Ms. Carey on that, because that's my favorite thing to do.
You can't
Yeah.
just automatically.
Right, we can't amend the ordinance still as they're sitting here. The board doesn't have that ability. If council wants to change it, then we could apply it. But this board can't change the ordinance.
Yeah, but they could amend their application.
They can't request, because it's not a single-family housing
Yeah.
unit, they can't request that the town take it over. So we couldn't approve that at this point.
All right.
There's other amenities that the homeowner fees are going to in this development?
I think
There's
Is there other,
open
like
space
playgrounds
areas.
or?
There are open space areas. I don't know if there are any tot lots or any other thing
Not
proposed.
with, not in this specific section, but there is a large recreational component associated with Woodhaven Village development, a very large clubhouse and other amenities around that.
If I may, I'm sorry. I think what the chairwoman's asking is that specific to this development, there's going to be an HOA, and what are they going to be responsible for? I believe that in addition to the drainage basins, there's parking lots, and there's retaining walls, and there's quite a few things in this development that the HOA is going to be responsible for, in addition to the stormwater.
So it's not just the.
So it's not just a stormwater association, it's going to be
Correct.
Open
an
space
association
areas.
that has open space, and the parking lots really is the most important thing, because the township's not going to go in there and plow those parking lots either.
Right.
So they're going to have to take care of that.
Okay.
And there'll be 186 units contributing to that HOA, right?
Oh, yes, correct.
Anyone from this side? Anybody have any questions or comments? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Lauer?
Yeah, I just,
Oh.
being that we discussed upon the courtyards and that the township wouldn't be going in, being that it's a PUD, isn't the township responsible for some portion of the snow removal and things?
Only on the public streets, the parts that are dedicated, right?
Well, I think we do
Well, I-
contribute, there is.
I think there's and again, Mr. Reif will probably be able to opine on this or chime in on it too, but I think there is typically for associations, the township does reimburse for
Right.
snow removal.
For lighting and snow plowing.
Yes. That's correct.
That's right.
Okay, anybody else have any questions or comments? Oh, I mean Lauer, Mr. Lauer.
So my understanding is that these streets are going to be private?
No, these streets are all
gonna be
dedicated
public.
public roadways to the Township of Old Bridge.
Okay, so when you said 30 feet, you meant the path?
30-foot wide
the
cartway with
paved
curb
area,
to
50
curb,
foot?
sidewalks on both sides, and then a 50-foot public right-of-way.
Okay. One little question. Daly, do you realize, I know it's spelled differently, but there's a Daly Road in that area of the township. Any concerns of
We'll re-
possibly 911, a problem with 911?
I'm not sure how these street names got created.
What's the one he's
You have to identify yourself and be sworn. Yeah. You have a seat.
You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And just spell your name for the record, please.
My name is Bill Ife, I-A-F like Florida E.
Thank you.
Bill, please respond to the issue.
And the question again was?
We have a
The
similar
Daly
name.
Road
Oh,
road.
Daly
One
Road.
question.
Where we got the name from, we were furnished with a list from the township, and we chose from the township's list of streets. If it's a confusion, if things have changed since we picked that name, you want us to change it, we have no problem to changing the name.
Yeah, I just thought I mentioned it because I know they're spelled differently, but
It was from the list. It was, we didn't realize there was another one somewhere else, but it was from
Yeah, I
the
think in
township's approved list.
Crossroads.
If you want a different name, we'll certainly change it to something else.
Have we exhausted the veterans list?
That's what he's talking about. I believe that's
That's
what
where
he's
we got
saying.
the name.
Have we exhausted it, that we're getting to these other names, or?
No, Daly was from, I believe, was from the veterans
Yeah, well,
list.
they use daily, like you said,
Oh,
what was the? Crossroads? Not Cross, the, Birch Hill. There's a daily in Birch Hill, so definitely, and it's only around the corner.
Okay.
Well, we're definitely creating,
oh, no, it's a simple matter to,
Okay.
All right, you're
To
going to
fix
check
that.
with the township then. Okay, any other questions? Yes. Yeah, Mr. Pink, can you use the microphone?
Just talking about the streets, are these streets going to allow the police to ticket on the streets? Are they part of Old Bridge, or are they part of this community?
Public.
They're public roads that are part of Old Bridge, so yes, the police have the authority to go through those streets and enforce the law.
Thank you.
Okay, is there affordable housing in this section?
in this section, no. The affordable housing is in section 2, phases 1, 3, and 4. And all 75 units are there.
Okay, all right, so does anybody from the public have any questions or concerns?
Oh, sure, yep, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My name is Joseph Mara. I'm the Business Administrator for the Old Bridge Township Board of Ed. I've been with the district for 6 years now, and when we were developing our strategic plan 2 years ago, the issue of building a new community school arose. And at that point, we realized that when the Woodhaven development was conceived, it included 15 acres of land that was granted to the Board of Education for a school district on that facility. At that point, we undertook to evaluate the 15 acres that were being granted to the school district, and it was determined that only 4.6 acres of the property that was being granted is actually buildable for a school district. So I've brought here with us tonight Tokarski and Milliman, the architect of record for the school district, just to point out a little more clearly what the problem is with the 15 acres and why we are unable to build a school facility there. Now, on that part of town, the western part of town, we have only the Voorhees Elementary School and Salk School, and that's where most of the development is happening in the township. Voorhees is already at full capacity as a result of the Woodhaven expansion as exists today. So we would just like to put on record that the 15 acres that have been granted to us for a school district, and again, this was conceived 20 years ago, we cannot build a school district on that. And with that, I would like to just transfer this over to the architect of record for the district, just to be a little more specific with what the problems are with the property. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Mr. Mara. Madam Chairwoman, members of the board, my name is Mike Milliman. I'm with Tokarski Milliman Architects.
You're gonna give testimony? Should we swear you in, I'm thinking?
Yeah, that'd be fine, yes. The last name is, oh, you want to swear me in first, I guess?
Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Just spell your name, please.
Yes, it's Millemann.
Thank you.
So as Mr. Mara was mentioning, a few years ago, we started looking at potential sites for the growth of the school district. A lot of the facilities are aging, and they're looking to potentially construct a new school. The information that he was mentioning before regarding public open space that was dedicated as part of the general development plan We reviewed the parcel. We had a site civil engineer review it. Just a very conceptual overview, having to deal mostly with the environmental issues. So first things they look at are wetlands and flood hazard areas. And from their initial view or review of the parcel, they found that from the 15 acres that was originally granted, just between 4 and 5 acres is developable due to the restrictions with wetlands and flood hazard. So the school board is looking for consideration for the spirit of the original development plan to provide for space for a community school. And that's essentially just what I wanted to reiterate what Mr. Mara had mentioned earlier.
Do you have a report that you can be provided?
I do, yes.
Do you have it with you, or can you,
I do, yes.
more than one copy?
I have multiple copies if you want me to.
Certainly give one to Mr. Schmanowitz, and
Sure.
that the board can have
I
one.
think we need
We're going to mark it as, let's call it 01. And if you can give me a title from that?
Is there an LOI in here?
Is that an LOI or just an engineer's report?
No, it's a site investigation. It's preliminary feasibility review for block 22001, lot 4.12.
Someone identify that on the map where it would be located?
It's actually the parcel just below the housing that's
That gray
grayed
parcel
out.
that's in the middle?
It's long and narrow.
Yeah, that's it.
Correct.
Typically, what is the acreage needed to construct a school facility
Yeah, 14 acres is proper for a 600-student elementary school.
with parking and?
Correct, and other amenities on site, correct.
And when was this review done or study?
It's dated February 9th, 2018.
So previous to that, you hadn't gotten any information regarding the property?
No, previous to that, we did not have any other information other than what was provided or what was part of the original public open space
Yeah.
dedication.
Yes, Mr. Merwin.
That 15 acres were originally done in the original GDP, right? And then the DEP redid the property.
Well,
Changed a few things.
it's this,
Probably one of those things that were just left out.
well, the story is richer than that. If I could, I think maybe take 10 minutes, I guess, to
I'm
start at the
sorry, we
beginning.
can't hear you. Can you?
It would probably take me 5 or 10 minutes to start at the beginning and get you to today. So it's probably valuable to do that.
Back and come up with another site?
Yeah.
I brought an older exhibit, the land use plan from the amended general development plan.
We're going to mark that today as Exhibit A2.
This will give you context for the entire GDP.
Tell us what A2 is, for the record.
A2 is the land use plan from the amended general development plan for Woodhaven Village. It is last dated October 8th, 2009. The 15-acre public open space has its genesis in the plan development ordinance, and I have the original GDP approval resolution here, and I'll read the finding of fact and the condition from that approval. Although I'll preface that with, in the ordinance that the GDP was approved under, a Class 2 plan development, of which Woodhaven Village is required to dedicate 23% of its property as open space. The applicant may dedicate 3% of that number, so 3% of the 20, not 3% of the 23, but 3% is part of the 23, so 20 open space and 3 public open space for either public or private community uses. And Woodhaven did that. So finding of fact number 10 from the original GDP application 2489P from 1989 reads, if the applicant has proposed to construct or contribute funds up to a maximum expenditure of $6 million to the construction of a school or other community facility, the ultimate nature of which will be determined by the Township Council. The applicant has submitted a phasing schedule for the contribution of the funds to be utilized in connection with said facility. This phasing schedule is set forth in the conditions of this approval and is reasonable in view of the timing schedule described above and herein approved. That phasing schedule was the cash contributions per CO. So Woodhaven initially started out with 2,000 units. It was 1995, but I'll use 2,000 because it's easy to divide by. So $6 million divided by 2,000 was $3,000 per unit. And with the amended ACO, the unit count went down, so the unit price for each contribution went up. So right now, we're paying $1,400. Tell you the truth. It's over $4,000 per unit because we have 1,600 units instead of 2,000, 3,000, 2,000.
And those contributions you pay currently?
We pay those contributions currently with each CO.
Thank you.
The 15-acre public open space site was 15 acres of uplands back then. I don't know what it is today because there's no LOI, and the township owns the property. It was in the center of the site, which was a motivator for why it is where it is. And it was intended to be a 15-acre site, not plus or minus that, and it was a community facility, not necessarily a school. So that was that, and it had to be dedicated with the first plats that Woodhaven filed. And we did that. I have a deed dated January 7, 2003, to the township with a right-of-way to get to the property. You have to remember that back in 2003, McLean Street, none of these streets were there, so the township wanted to ensure that it could get to that property no matter what happened to Woodhaven. So there are easements to get to the property that are in place today. Those easements are coincident with McLean Street and Woodhaven Boulevard, so when McLean Street and Woodhaven Boulevard are dedicated as public streets, the town owns an easement and a public street in the same place at the same time. So nothing really changes, except it's improved access instead of an unimproved access.
At the area of the pool and the clubhouse?
The pool and the clubhouse are literally on Woodhaven Boulevard, in between Phase 5 and Phase 3. And one of our amendments was to put it on Woodhaven Boulevard, so it wasn't part of a particular phase. It was for everyone. And that pool and clubhouse is voluntary. That's not part of anybody's association fee, so if your family wants to go somewhere else, you're not paying for this. We thought that was fair to the people. Keep the fees down. So that was deeded to the town. And before it was deeded to the town hired an architect. Now, I cannot find the report. I'm not sure if it was given to me because it wasn't a decision of mine anyway. Town hired an architect who did schools and reviewed that particular site and said it's okay. And this is back when we did this, which was exactly the right time to be doing this. So they did this, and the town accepted the deed. There's an ordinance. If I can find it. Anyway, there's an ordinance which I forwarded to the township engineer accepting that piece of property. So as of today, the township has owned it. We did not give it to the Board of Education. We gave it to the township. And we gave the township this piece, and we gave the township the 220-acre park as community facilities, because as a developer, it was not our decision that they should be which facility should be where. That was the township's decision, where it needed what. So that was then all done at the proper time. So that brings us today, and the whole point of that whole discussion was that we're in compliance with all of the approvals that we got, and we did them all in good faith, and I believe the town did everything that it was supposed to be doing in good faith to accept those. And I didn't read the condition, and the condition itself is condition number 3 from the original GDP approval, which is longer. Subject to the review, acceptance, and approval of the Old Bridge Township Council, and prior to the filing of the first final subdivision plat with respect to the development, the applicant will dedicate to the Township of Old Bridge, or any entity designated by the Township, free and clear of all liens, encumbrances, reservations, and rights, a 15-acre parcel of land designated POS and located in the central portion of the site as shown on the land use plan. That is it. That's the piece that the town wanted. Prior to the recording thereof, the deed of dedication shall be submitted for the review and approval of the township engineer and the township attorney or the planning board attorney. Furthermore, the applicant shall either contribute to the township $6 million for the construction of a community facility on said site or construct a community facility having a construction cost of at least $6 million. The nature of such facility shall be approved by the board, subject to the acceptance of the township council or such other appropriate public agency. In the event that the applicant elects to make a aforesaid contribution in lieu of construction, then the contribution shall be payable at the rate of $3,000 per certificate of occupancy for each market residential unit. And that's what we did until our unit count went down and the $3,000 became $4,100 and something. So the point of all of that was that we're in compliance with all our approvals. Notwithstanding, we're at a planning board meeting, and I would much rather do these kind of discussions offline. I don't know what the real condition of that site is. The town has owned it for close to 20 years now. There is no LOI on it. There is no formal flood hazard area control act line on it. There's a letter from an engineer. Taking the state of facts as they are, I think if the town is going to pursue a building on that site, you need an LOI, you need a Flood Hazard Area Control Act line. So those things should be done before jumping to a conclusion that the site has no utility to us. If the site turns out to be okay, notwithstanding some architect's opinion, that's great. If it doesn't, there are other things that that maybe we could do. As far as just swapping land wholesale, I don't have anything contiguous to make a school site. If I did, that would make things easy, but I don't have a contiguous piece. When we bring Section 3 in, you'll see that we kind of struggled with that. I would love a rectangular piece of property to work with. Someday, maybe I'll get one. But I think it is better, considering that everybody did what they were supposed to do, that if there's some way that some mutual benefit could happen out of this, we go that direction. We're willing to talk to them. There's no need to object to applications. But beyond that, talking to them to see what could possibly be done. I don't know.
Just following up on one comment Mr. Reif made, Woodhaven's been coming here for decades, and we've always worked with the town, and we will continue to do so. In terms of this hearing tonight, we're here for final approval on Section 2, Phase 5. The property that's subject, that is the subject of the Board of Ed's comments, is not the subject of the application tonight. Doesn't mean Woodhaven's running away or not willing to have a conversation. I don't know what we can do. Maybe there's some mutual benefit. We're always willing to talk. But it really should not be part of the discussion, or at least what is the subject matter of the application tonight. We've been granted preliminary on Phase 5. We're here tonight for final. We're trying to prove our case that we've satisfied the conditions of final. It really should not be an issue properly before the board tonight. But with that said, Mr. Reif opened the door for having discussions, but I don't think this is the forum to do it.
What section is that land that was dedicated?
It's not really a section of Woodhaven, it's a POS parcel.
It's in the general.
Included in any section that was before the board?
In the GDP, there were land use parcels that we would have for residential development, and we would call them Section 2, Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, et cetera. And there were some ordinance-required parcels, large open space parcels and public open space parcels that are their own. They are their own thing. It's the 15-acre public open space site. There was an application back in the 1990s that I have a copy of the plat for that, and it's the 15-acre public open space dedication. And maybe I should even put that in the record.
You could do so, sure.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but if it's not part of any section, then when do we discuss it?
Well, perhaps to be Mr. Szymanowicz, if you could just state, there are several other open areas that don't have final approval. What else is still up to come before the board? Your Woodhaven's not complete yet, right?
Section 3 has not obtained preliminary approval. Bill, are there other sections that do not have final?
There are other areas that do not have final. Estates 2 has a preliminary, it doesn't have a final. Section 2, Phase 6 does not have a final approval yet. Phase 5 is what we're here this evening for, which at this moment it doesn't have a final approval. And some of the commercial sections. There's one OC2, which I'll be bringing in very shortly, a flex space application that doesn't have a preliminary.
Okay, well, I just want to say for myself, having been with this development since it was first conceived, that site was an integral and, part of us even considering having Woodhaven in town, that we knew that it was important that we have a potential school site, community center, what other facilities, because that section of town doesn't have, as it pointed out, there's only the one school. So it has to be resolved. This has to be resolved. We have to have a site that's going to work. And so how do we get there? How do we identify another site that's going to accommodate the 15 acres?
I think the first thing to do is to look at this 15 acres, because an engineer's report does not mean the site is not buildable. You need an LOI, and you need a Flood Hazard Area Control Act line to find out where you can and you cannot build. That engineers don't get to decide that. The DEP does that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that if it is true that you can't build a site there, then I said we would go look and see what else we could do, because we want the town to be happy with Woodhaven too. We come and we ask you for approval, so we know that we have to give the town what it expects from us. So that is our intention. There's a few things that I thought of during the course of today when I heard that the school board was going to come this evening. I don't know if they make any sense or not, and they're really not the thing to talk about at a planning board hearing, because I haven't thought them through. But I know that there are possibly some things to do. But the first thing I would do would see exactly what facts are behind the complaint.
Okay, but do you have any comments regarding that? Legally?
Legally, the applicant's in front of us with a request for approval of a final site plan for which preliminary was granted, and they've not made any changes. So the board's a little hard-pressed to not approve this final since they haven't changed anything. The GDP is a larger overarching thing, and because they do still have at least 4 other things where the GDP is not complete, including in the Section 5 that we just adjourned till the August date, right? Or the
Section 3.
Sorry, Section 3. Section 3 that we just adjourned is going to be back in front of the board in August. My suggestion would be that this needs to be well on its way to being decided before that August date. Might be a compromise that the board could come to at this point.
Right, because I don't think the board can be in a position to, review any further applications until we get this resolved.
And then one coming in August is preliminary. That's not this is in a different position because it's a final approval. It was really granted, and they just didn't do it yet. We're only giving final. The case law on holding up final is much more difficult than that's going to be a preliminary. Okay.
All right, does anybody else on the board have any concerns they want to raise regarding this?
Well, I do.
Yes.
I'm looking at the overall cycle. The proposed property for the Board of Ed falls under the umbrella of Phase 5. So, if you want to pull back up your board. So my question is, from a planning standpoint, the planning phases, how can you not factor in the access and the use of the property that's dedicated to the Board of Ed or the municipality? In this case, it's on the drawing within the shaded area. So I don't believe that we can say, let's not talk about this at this stage, because it's on the plan, but it's
That is technically called an out parcel. I cannot have a phase of mine that's got somebody else's property in it, that's owned by the township for years. So that's not part of my application because I don't own it. And that's the technical answer. We did say, well, there's also other properties that are shaded. Right. No, that was part of the GDP, and that's why I went through that discussion about where it all came from. Where are we standing right now?
We should be clear, Bill, the lot that is the subject of this application is a separate and distinct lot from the lot that was conveyed to the town years ago.
This is separate. I don't think we need to be arguing about this.
No.
Because we've already said that we would do what we can to find out what's going on down there. I'm at a disadvantage because before I would come and say somebody did something to me, I would have a little more homework done. That is an engineer's report, and they're worried about it. So I got that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that's accurate. So that's the first thing to check, and we're willing to go look and check it. And if it turns out that they can't do, the town can't put what it wants to put in there, we'll do something. I'm sure we can make an accommodation someplace. It is not something that I can just, off the top of my head, say, we'll go over here then. I can't do that tonight.
That's understood. I'm just making the point that it's within the phase 5 zone. So it's part of the plan unless we extract it from the plan. It's within the boundary.
No, I mean, I respect it as an out parcel. I mean, I respectfully disagree that it's part of Phase 5, but I guess, because it's not ours, and it's not part of the Phase 5 final, and it was a condition of Section 1 actually way back when, to dedicate that property, to the township. And that was all done. So there's no outstanding condition or anything. And going forward, our willingness to work with the Board of Education to see what we can do is,
Madam
that's all we can do.
Madam Chairperson,
Yes.
with all due respect to Mr. Eichmann and the application, when do we do this? This is like a cum bed in crap, You want us to approve this one, and we'll talk about it on the next one. But maybe the next one, you're going to say, well, we'll talk about it on the next one. I agree with the chairperson. It's just it's something that has to be taken care of. I mean, unless the attorney rules otherwise, I agree with the chairperson.
I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage as well because I haven't been here through the full 20, 30 years of this. So if what Mr. I've read from the resolution is true, and I'm not saying that it's not, but I need to go back and make sure he's reading the last one and the right version, because all these things have been amended over time. So that's my hesitation. That I'm not certain that what we have in front of us is all the final thing. But given if what you'd said was true, it sounds to me like the applicant is in compliance with what is required to do under the GDP. Therefore, if the board doesn't grant final approval when it complies with the preliminary approval, and the applicant decides, we're tired of waiting, we're going to sue you on this, I think the board is in a very bad position. So that's my job, is to give you your legal advice. The board has to vote your conscience. You have to do what you think is right. I would think that knowing the applicant has another application that's for preliminary coming up in August now, it's not final, it's not partially approved yet, it's a preliminary application, that before that gets finalized, that's a better sticking point for the board to hold on, to hang our hat on in order to make something happen. Certainly, they need cooperation from the town and from the Board of Ed, however, because the town owns the property. So the investigation is going to be partially on the town to get out there and get an LOI, and I know those take time. My recommendation would be to move ahead this evening on the merits of this application, but that the board's going to strongly consider holding off on the next preliminary until these issues are, or at least there's a time frame and a an outline for how it's going to be addressed.
So the point is that the Board of Education is on record,
Right.
being here, addressing their concern, and looking at it from a perspective that you've laid out, I see what you're saying. I do understand it.
And I was, I think the board heard that the applicant is willing to work with the town, that if it really is not something that can be used, to see if there's something else that can be done. So certainly we could put that down as part of the minutes of this hearing, and that was under oath, and that we've got that they're willing to work with, with the town and the board and the Board of Ed to come up with.
Question for the attorney. Is the council going to have to do anything with this, that I would have to recuse myself from voting on this? Or if I vote on this, I'll have to recuse myself from voting on something at the
No,
council?
you're specifically here as the liaison from the board to the council, so you're supposed to be involved in it on both ends. That's
I'm
the whole-
supposed to what?
You should be involved in it on both ends. In fact, you can help explain to the council.
I mean, I
what
can,
happened
right?
here. Right, you can vote on both ends, and then you can help explain to us what the council may think on the other side. Absolutely, at some point, council will probably need to be included, however, because the town owns the property. So even to get permission for somebody to go into the site and start work on an LOI is a letter of interpretation, DEP gives that out. It's a certification of where the wetland lines are and what can be used. And then as we've seen through all the history of this Woodhaven and all the developments in this area, that's still not the final say, because then you can do wetlands buffering and averaging, and you can, in order to come up with a buildable lot, there's still sometimes ways to, you encroach here, but you give more back here, and there are still ways to play with it. The LOI is just the first step in determining if there's any area that can be used, and then how might you be able to play with it within the regulations from DEP.
So another point that the Board of Education did put on record, the question is, are they satisfied with that? I mean, unless they're not able to comment back to us, but that's the question.
Well, they can't really tell the board
Okay.
what to do.
Yeah,
Wanna make sure.
I think the Board of Ed's going
Can't
to
tell
need
the
to.
planning board what to do.
Right, and they're going to need to go back and discuss amongst themselves where they feel. I mean, certainly the town and the Board of Ed and the council and the planning board need to work together on this, even though we're separate entities.
And
Is anybody else? Yes.
how do we track this to make sure it's tabled at the August meeting and we don't lose it going forward?
I don't think that can happen. I think,
Well, I think we have to have it happen because
No, I mean, I
we're
don't think
not
it's
going to
gonna
hear
go.
this we're not going to hear the August application if we don't have the information, if we don't have the LOI or whatever we need to know that this is moving forward.
or at least a statement from the Board of Ed or from the township that the LOI has been, is in progress and it maybe take however long, or that they've come up with something. I mean, I think we need something before August 2nd that shows what's been done and that everybody's in a serious place to get it accomplished.
Right.
Yeah. If the LOI if DEP says it's going to be 9 months or a year, then we may need to. But we'll deal with it at that time. Which is why I say right now, not knowing what that's going to come out like and how long it's going to take, it's hard to put a timeline on.
But I mean, it may have to be that there maybe have to be some redesign within the sections that have not been received
right. And that's-
preliminary to accommodate a similar
and that's-
parcel of land.
And that's why the next application, which is for preliminary, is the better spot to hang the board's head on this versus one that's already been granted preliminary and hasn't requested any changes.
And I don't wish the applicant's silence to be interpreted as an assent to any of this. We have certain rights based on our approvals.
Right.
I have to do that as the lawyer, but you can see our demeanor here, and particularly Mr. Rife's. We're willing, after this hearing, to sit with the township representatives, the Board of Ed representatives, and see if there's some common ground here to work this through. But we do have certain rights under our approvals as well.
Right. But you also would be in a much better position to continue to market your homes there if they knew there was a school going to be in the area and not an overcrowded school.
Good
Where
point.
the kids may have to go in double session or whatever, right?
And my
Good
kids
point.
go to those schools.
No.
Yeah.
Woodhaven understands all of this, and that's why we put those public open space parcels in there in the first place. We just need to know what really is there. We have to get an LOI. Have to get the flood hazard line, have to get those formal. There is permitting that can happen. There's buffer averaging that can happen. We've done this at Woodhaven, so you just do it again over there. And the township council is going to have to get involved because they'll have to sign the applications. And as far as timing goes, This is one of the things about getting a governmental agency, because it meets once in a while. It's not 9 o'clock every morning like we are at the office. So the scheduling for hiring a wetland expert to go out there, that's fast. Getting the township to sign the access agreements and all of that stuff. Just understand that we will not be the holdup. We'll do everything as fast as we can. We need the cooperation of the Board of Education, who's ever got to sign things over there, who's got to expedite things over there. And then the Township Council has to say yes to signing the EP applications.
So if it doesn't meet the requirements they need, do you feel there are parcels on the site that can accommodate? Of course, they may say we need a smaller site if that's the case.
I am sure that with what is left, that Woodhaven and the Board of Education and the Township, there's a mutually, everybody can be happy at the end of the process. I'm sure of that.
Satisfied.
Okay, but I don't think we can accept a smaller site because he said it takes.
Oh, I'm not saying a smaller site. It was a 15-acre site, and it was checked out the last time, which is why I'm kind of harping on you got to get an LOI, because somebody did this back in 20 years ago. Somebody ostensibly did this. So if it was right then, it should still be at least close now. So I just want to get that, because we relied on whoever the township hired way back then to say the site was all right. They did say it was all right. I trusted them. So I'm hoping that they actually were right, and that the LOI comes back and there is 15 acres there. If not, then I am sure that between the planning board and us and the Board of Education, everybody comes out whole.
Okay, if there's no other comments, we'll continue. So your next,
Our next witness is our architect, Mr. Rob Larson.
Get you sworn in. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And just spell your name for the record, please.
Larsen.
Thank you.
And Rob, the short version of your qualifications, knowing that you've been qualified before this board.
Sure, I'm a licensed architect here in the state of New Jersey. Have been for the past 14 years. I have a degree in architecture from New Jersey Institute of Technology, and I've presented before this board a number of times.
okay, thank you.
And Rob, what boards are you going to utilize? We're going to start with Exhibit A3.
Sure. I have two exhibits as required, and the first one, which I will, this is A2, Ron, or A3?
3.
You're marking A3.
Okay. Well, you have a sticker for me. That's it? Okay, so what I have here as Exhibit A3 is actually a townhouse design that I believe has been submitted to the board as prepared by Holiday Architects. These townhouses are what have been built as part of Section 2 at Woodhaven, and what my client continues to, intends to continue to build as part of this application this evening. As we said, we have 186 total townhouses and 30 buildings. There are N units that are approximately just under 2,200 square feet, and there are internal units which are just over 1,900 square feet. These are all 3-bedroom townhouses, 1-car garage, 1-car driveway. And the reason I put A3 up is, again, this is just a color representation of what was in your application packet and is what has been constructed at Section 2. So if I may, this is really just to show you that this is what was submitted, I believe, as part of the application. And if I can go right to Exhibit A4, these, to me, represent much better to the board what will be constructed, because these are what are existing at Section 2. So what I will call out for Exhibit A4 are 4 photographs taken by my office 1 week ago over at Woodhaven in Section 2, and we can see The townhouses, these are the market townhouses as described and as proposed this evening. These buildings are, in terms of height, 34, just over 34 feet by your height calculation. Again, you can see they are, to me, quite beautiful, constructed with stone, a variety of siding types, corner boards, trim detailing, a variety of window styles and sizes. So as the architect this evening, I'd like to say I had a whole bunch more to say, but I wanted to portray to the board that we intend to continue constructing townhomes similar to what we have been constructing, which I think are finished quite well. In terms of basements, we would like to, each of the units will have a basement as soil permits. We have 186 three-bedroom townhouses, similar in character and style to what is being constructed out there right now.
And Rob, is it fair to say that since the preliminary approval, the architecture that was included in preliminary approval, that we have updated by way of sort of a more modern look and code compliance in what you've presented tonight? So the architecture is a little different and somewhat updated since the preliminary?
That's correct. And since preliminary, at preliminary, you were shown a three-bedroom, one-car garage townhouse. The internal unit's 24 feet, the external unit's 28 feet. But as Mr. Shemanowitz just said, we've been continuing to work with the market, work with what's beautiful and acceptable in terms of the exterior finish and even some of the internal choices on room layouts. But again, in terms of type of home, this is an R5 single-family townhouse, 2 stories, same as it was back then.
Thank you, Rob. Nothing further, Mr. Larson.
Okay. Does our planner have any comments?
No, Madam Chairwoman.
The board? Yes, Mr. Lauer.
I'm looking at the bottom right picture there. Those decks, are they for the upper floor?
They are. So it turns out that this photograph that we took is at a grading situation where a walkout basement was able to be achieved. But in our proposed units, these decks are on the first floor of living, so your living, dining, kitchen level.
So the people can come right out of their unit onto their property?
Yes, onto their deck.
And that's just an example. It's not a typical picture of what we'll be building.
Yeah, again, where, this particular, my choice of this photo was to show you that the back of the building is as treated as well as the front of the building, and to portray the decks. Again, this does portray a walkout basement scenario.
There are some in the development that have that.
Yeah, and there are some of the homes as part of Section 2, Phase 5 will have this situation. So.
Okay, then my second question, will the people that have that situation, will they have stairways going down to the ground level?
I do not believe, no. And in fact, I can tell you from this photograph here, we have not provided that for these owners.
Okay, so then how would they use they're going to have their own property behind those units, right?
Yes, and there's access from the walkout basement.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
What is the decking material made of? Is it a solid fiberglass surface? Is it regular deck boards? What is it?
Okay, so the way that these were constructed, it's like Trex, which is a fibrous, it's a high-quality, low-maintenance, resilient material for the decking. And it is not solid fiberglass, no.
Okay. Is there any portion of that support which is actually extending into the living structure itself? What I'm seeing when I see situations, the reason I'm asking about this is my concern is for water intrusion on lower levels, especially it seems like a weak point in terms of that.
That's actually a awesome point because, no, we do not have any of that. And the reason we often put fiberglass is when we have decks over living space. We do not have that here.
Yep.
Anybody else? Is there some variety in the architecture of these townhouses, or are they all identical? They all look the same?
From my understanding, while we do, there has been variation in the smaller windows that have been placed and like that, but right now they're proposed to be more of these. They're gathered in groups of 4, 6, and 8 through the 30 buildings.
Some have the small dormers and some have gables and.
Yeah, again, across an elevation, you have the double gable, you have the small dormer. On the end elevations, you get these small windows.
Okay. All right. Is there anyone from the public that has any questions regarding the architecture?
I have one
Okay.
additional question, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Woodward.
In terms of, I see from one of the pictures, it looks as though mailboxes for each unit are directly outside. I'm just wondering, in terms of response time for fire personnel and things like that, are the unit numbers clearly, where are they typically indicated? Are they over the garage? Are they on the mailboxes? Where?
I would have to defer to my client on how it's been constructed today. Yeah. Okay, so this is something that the applicant works with Mr. Hart to be sure that it is acceptable for his requirements.
Okay. All right, I believe we're done with this witness.
Yes, thank you, Rob. We have nothing further to our case.
That's it?
That was it.
Okay, do our professionals have anything to add or subtract, or?
Nothing to subtract or add.
How about the board?
I have another question.
Yes.
I don't know who the appropriate person to ask this would be, but fire breaks between the units, how are those typically constructed?
So these are, again, R5 single-family townhouses. Between each and every home, there will be a firewall, which will be constructed to meet the appropriate fire rating between each townhome.
Does the wall extend fully from basement level all the way up to the roof?
It does.
Thank you.
That's all inspected by the town, correct?
And it is all to meet the current, I believe, 2015 International Building Code. And when we submit for permit, we will meet whatever code is applicable at that time.
Are any of these sprinklered? Do they reach the height that they have to be sprinklered? Or?
They do not. These are two-story, so these are not, none of the existing ones, to my understanding, are sprinklered, and none of these are intended to be.
Even with the walkout basements?
No. The basement would only becomes a story after a certain amount is exposed, so these do not meet that criteria.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, one thing I do want to correct, just for the record. Earlier on, we talked about the roads being public and whether there would have to be a contribution and all that kind of stuff. These roads are going to be public roadways. So the parking lots would still be just the private parking lots that are owned and maintained by the association. I don't know that, and I'm not an attorney, but I don't know that that's something that they can come back to the town and ask for a reimbursement on. It really has to do with the roads and the lighting and trash pickup and those kind of things. So I just wanted to put that on the record so the bill doesn't come back and send us another bill.
Okay, do I need to do the public?
Just do it because nobody.
Okay, anybody from the public, final comments or questions? Okay, seeing no hands, we'll close the public portion, and we'll have the attorney read the pertinent points.
This is an application for final site plan. Preliminary site plan was already approved. The applicant has not requested any changes, significant changes from the original preliminary approval. They have agreed to comply with all the professionals' reports and all the conditions within those. They have clarified that there is not that variance for the rear yard and Building 50. And they have stated that an HOA will be established to deal with the stormwater and the other shared portions of the project.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Okay, moved by Mr. Marucci. Is there a second?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt? Okay, roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Mr.
Yes.
Mr. Honey?
Yes.
Mr. Pink?
Yes.
Mr. Luca?
Yes.
Chairman Cannon?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so, but you'll just keep in mind
We will.
that we won't see you again until this matter's been resolved.
Madam Chairman, is there anything that we need to do to make sure that this is on the burner tomorrow? For the, whether it be the township planner or whether it be the head of community development? Is there anything we need to put into place so that these things are starting right now?
I think Mr. Shemanowitz and I will probably have a conversation tomorrow and probably include Rakesh in that as well.
Okay, nothing we have to do then?
And when we need to get to the board, I'll give a call to Mark Roselli.
Okay. Thank you. If there's no, any other comments or questions, we'll have a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye.